When a narcissist collapses, every minute of their life feels like a walk on burning charcoal. The world they once controlled becomes unrecognizable. The praise dries up, the supply disappears. The lies no longer work, and suddenly the narcissist finds themselves face to face with a reality they cannot change. Everyone talks about what a narcissist looks like when they collapse, the rage, the breakdown, the desperation, but no one ever asks the deeper question, which is, how does the narcissist experience their own collapse? What does it feel like from inside their mind, the one they have spent years armoring with illusion, control, and false superiority? That is the part no one wants to touch because it is the most revealing. Because when a narcissist collapses, it's not just their world falling apart, it is their identity. It is like being the captain of a ship who insisted the ocean would obey them. And now that the ship is sinking, they're still pretending it's a royal parade. But deep down they know water is flooding in. Their ego cannot plug the holes. And the ship is going down and down with no one left on board but them. Hi, I am Danish, a narcissistic abuse recovery professional. Welcome to my channel. Today, I am going to take you inside that very moment, the psychological, emotional, and spiritual collapse of a narcissist. Not from the outside, but from inside their mind. You will see how their inner world crumbles, how their defenses turn against them, and why their fall feels like the end of existence itself. Before getting into it, a very important announcement. I'm doing an online training. The topic is how to heal after surviving a narcissistic parent. If you want to book your spot at an early bird price, click the link in the description or I button above. At the core of every narcissist is a fragile and fragmented self. This self was buried long ago beneath layers of performance, perfectionism, and control. Their entire identity is a construction, a house of mirrors built to keep reality out and illusion in. But when collapse begins, the system that kept this illusion alive starts turning on itself. The narcissist's defense mechanisms such as denial, projection, blame shifting, and gaslighting, these were never just tools to manipulate others. They were survival tools, ways to protect the narcissist from their own shame, inadequacy, and a deep sense of unworthiness. But once the collapse hits, these mechanisms lose their power. The lies stop working, for example. The blame does not stick. People stop responding the way they used to. The narcissist is met with what? With blank stares or worse, indifference. And that is when the first crack appears. You see, a narcissist doesn't just fear being wrong, they fear being exposed. Their identity is so tightly tied to how others see them that when people begin to leave, withdraw, or stand up to them, it doesn't feel like disagreement. It feels like death. The illusion begins to dissolve, and all the suppressed fears they locked away come crawling to the surface like smoke through the cracks. It starts subtly. They will try harder to charm, they will push harder to control, they will demand your empathy, even weaponize their own pain. But underneath, panic is setting in. They are realizing the external world no longer reflects back the image they tried so hard to project. And for a narcissist, losing control of their image is like losing oxygen. When the outside world stops validating them, the narcissist turns inward. But of course not in a healing way ever. Not to reflect or take responsibility, no. They retreat into a fantasy world where they are still powerful, admired, still on top. They begin replaying old victories like highlight reels, moments where they controlled, seduced, or dominated someone. They cling to those memories as proof that they're still relevant, still wanted, and still something. It's like watching a fading celebrity obsessed over their past fame. They will remember the way someone used to look at them, the applause after a speech, the desperate messages from an ex begging them to come back. They relive those moments, not just to remember, but to feed. In those moments, they're still the center, still adored, and still untouchable. This is how the narcissist tries to become their own supply in a weird way. They talk to themselves in delusional affirmations like my grandfather did towards his end days. They may also stand in front of a mirror, hyping themselves up. That looks crazy. They will scroll through old photos, reread old compliments, and revisit past conversations where someone idolized them. It is all part of a desperate attempt to reconstruct their broken and falling apart reality. But this self-supply has a shelf life because it's not real. It's borrowed energy from the past, and it cannot sustain them for long. Eventually, the contrast between what they used to be and what they have now become becomes too painful to ignore. The past no longer inspires them, it taunts them. It reminds them that the world has moved on and they have not. That is when their inner walls start truly caving in. To a narcissist, failure isn't just a small setback, it is an identity crisis. They do not know how to separate what they do from who they are. So when they fail at something, whether it is a relationship, whether it is controlling you, a career move, or even something as small as losing influence over someone they remotely know, it feels like annihilation. Not just I failed, but I'm a failure, that kind of thing. And that is terrifying for them. Remember, they built their entire self-worth on external validation. So when people stop clapping, when things stop working in their favor, and when they can no longer manipulate the narrative, what do? They start to sink. But instead of naming the feeling as sadness or grief, they mask it with arrogance. Or worse, with rage. This is when their anger starts to mutate. It is no longer just the usual manipulative temper tantrums. This is something else. This is implosion. The kind of anger that has no clear target, so it hits everything. Everyone, even themselves. They become volatile, restless, desperate. Their mind becomes a battlefield of contradictions. They want attention, but they isolate. They want power, but they feel powerless. They want someone to understand them, but they refuse to show vulnerability. The result is an emotional hell loop that feels endless. And beneath all of it, there is this deep, unbearable hopelessness. They realize no matter how hard they try, they can't get the old version of life back. The people who once admired them are gone. The relationships they used to control are broken. The opportunities they once had have finished. And worst of all, they cannot admit why. Because doing that would require confronting the one thing they have avoided their entire life. What is that? The truth. So what do they do with all this pain? They weaponize it if they can. They begin to attack because they are drowning. That's the only reason. Their anger becomes the last shield they have left. But even that won't save them. A narcissist doesn't live in the same reality as everyone else. They live inside a story, sort of. They have written, directed, and starred in. And in that story, they're always the hero, the genius, the victim, or the worst, the savior. Whatever gets them the most attention and control. Their ego isn't just inflated, it is engineered, built brick by brick to protect the fragile, shame-filled core they buried long ago. But the catch is that reality only works as long as everyone else agrees to play their role. The moment people stop playing along, for example, when partners leave, when children grow up and see through the lies like I did, when co-workers stop tolerating the behavior, the whole structure starts to fall apart. And when that happens, it does not just feel like rejection, it feels like reality itself betraying them. The narcissist starts losing the ability to tell what is real and what's constructed. The lies they have told for years, even to themselves, start clashing with the facts they cannot control. So they start questioning their own narrative, but not with insight or humility, with confusion and panic. Why is everyone turning against me? Why is the world so unfair? Why is this happening to me? They do not think, maybe I did something wrong, maybe I did it to myself. They think, how dare they? And that is where the ego begins to crack. The grand story they built, the perfect parent, the loving partner, the brilliant success, the innocent victim, the innocent predator, it no longer holds. It doesn't stand up to reality, and reality is merciless. This collapse is beyond psychological, it's spiritual. The narcissist begins to feel like a ghost inside their own body. They die before death. They do not recognize who they are anymore because who they were was never real to begin with. It was a mask that worked, and now it does not. And when the mask no longer works, what is left? Nothing. Just shame, rage, and silence. When people walk away from a narcissist in this state, it doesn't register as loss. It registers as betrayal. Not because they loved you deeply, no, but because they believed you belonged to them. You were their mirror, their puppet, their toy, their proof of worth, their extension. So when you finally gather the strength to leave, you do not just exit, you defect in their mind. You turn into the mortal enemy. They do not sit with grief. They don't ask, what did I do wrong? They ask, how could you do this to me after everything I did for you? Classic. And what they really mean is, after all the control I had over you. Your departure becomes their final humiliation. It confirms what they fear most, that they are not godlike, not invincible, not needed. And that is what seals the collapse. Because the very people they used as scaffolding have walked away, and now the entire structure crashes down loudly, painfully, and without anyone there to watch or care. They are left in the ruins of their own illusion. And that is the part no one ever sees. Another thing is that the narcissist collapse is not the dramatic spectacle people expect. It is a quiet, private unraveling, a war waged behind a smile, a death of a self that was never real to begin with. And when it happens, they're not surrounded by comfort or grace. They're alone with nothing but echoes of the power they once stole, the people they once used, and the love they never learned how to feel. You may be healing, you may be rising, but they are trapped in a loop that only goes in circles. That is the real collapse. Not loud or explosive, just endless. And that, my dear survivor, is their worst karma. If you have witnessed what I'm talking about, let me know in the comments. I have witnessed it with my grandfather, and I can tell you there's nothing uglier than that. With that, let's bring this episode to an end. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I will talk to you in the next one. Until then, as always, let the healing begin and continue.